Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivachacharya Ashto Sat Shri Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivachacharya Ashto Sat Shri Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhakta Vindaki Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Gopa Gopinath Shama Kun Radha Kun Giri Govardhan Ki Shri Mai Pur Dham Ki Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Ganga Mai Ki Yamuna Mai Ki Bhakti Devi Ki Tulsi Devi Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Granth Taraj Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Sama Veda Bhakta Vinda Ki Gaura Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome. I have a humble request. This is my first class, so if you can ask questions at the end of class to help me become a better speaker and preacher, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. So the verse that I chose today is from Bhagavad Gita, 9th chapter, text 2. Rajavidya Rajaguyam Pavitram Idam Uttamam Pratyaksha Vagamam Dharmyam Susukam Kartamavyayam. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. This knowledge is the king of education, the most secret of all secrets. It is the purest knowledge, and because it gives direct perception of the self by realization, is the perfection of religion. It is everlasting and is joyfully performed. Purport. This chapter of Bhagavad Gita is called the King of Education because it is the essence of all doctrines and philosophies explained before. It is the most confidential because confidential or transcendental knowledge involves understanding the difference between the soul and the body, and the king of all confidential knowledge culminates in devotional service. Unfortunately, no university or educational institution where the science of the spirit soul is being instructed. Yet the soul is the most important part of the body. Without the presence of the soul, the body has no value. This knowledge is the purest form of all activities. As explained in Vedic literature in the Padma Purana, man's sinful activities have been analyzed and are shown to be the results of sin after sin. Those who are engaged in fruitive activities are entangled in different stages and forms of sinful reactions. For instance, when the seed of a particular tree is sown, the tree does not appear immediately to grow. It takes some time. It is first a small sprouting plant, then assumes the form of a tree. Then it flowers and bears fruit, and when it is complete, the flowers and fruits are enjoyed by persons who have sown the seed of the tree. Similarly, a man performs a sinful act, and like a seed, it takes time to fructify. There are sins which are still in the form of a seed, and there are others which are already fructified and giving us fruit which we are enjoying as distress and pain. A person who has completely ended the reactions of all sinful activities and who is fully engaged in pious activities, being freed from the duality of this material world, becomes engaged in devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. In other words, those who are actually engaged in the devotional service of the Supreme Lord are actually freed from all reactions. It is said that the execution of devotional service is so perfect that one can perceive the results directly. This direct result is actually perceived, and we have practical experience that any person who is chanting the holy names of Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, in course of chanting without offenses, feels some transcendental pleasure and very quickly becomes purified of all material contamination. This is actually seen. In every state, devotional service is joyful. One can execute devotional service in the most poverty-restricted condition. The Lord says, Patram Pushpam Palam Toyam. He is ready to accept from the devotee any kind of offering, never mind what, even a leaf, a flower, a bit of fruit, or a little water, which are all available in every part of the world and can be offered by any person, regardless of social position, and will be accepted if offered with love. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is also confirmed that when one becomes purified by executing the process of devotional service, especially by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam or Bhagavad Gita from realized souls, then he can understand the science of Krishna, or the science of God. Evam Pashana Manaso Bhagavad Bhakti Yogataha. When one's heart is cleared of all nonsense, then one can understand what God is. Thus the process of devotional service of Krishna consciousness is the king of all education and the king of all confidential knowledge. It is the purest form of religion, and it can be executed joyfully without difficulty. Therefore, one should adopt to it. Om Gyana Timarandasya Gyana Jana Shalakaya Chakshur Umiltam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurve Namaha. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, it is stated, in this iron age of Kali, men almost always have but short lives. They are quarrelsome, lazy, misguided, unlucky, and above all, always disturbed. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada says, in the Kali Yuga, the duration of life is shortened, not so much because of insufficient food, but because of irregular habits. The type of foods that are being consumed, the times that we eat, sleeping schedules, and not using this very valuable form of life properly. You could see that everywhere. When I go out on book distribution, I ask people, would you like a book? Would you like to know about spiritual knowledge? And they're not interested in any spiritual matters. They don't ask or inquire about what happens at the time of death. How should I prepare for death? What should one think of at the time of death? What to speak of trying to solve the real problems of life, which are birth, disease, old age, and death. Before washing machines were invented, people used to wash their clothes by the banks of the rivers. In India, there's a certain animal that is compared to the people of this age, the donkey. Sometimes it doesn't want to work, it's lazy. So what they do, I'm sure you guys have seen it in cartoons, they put a carrot. They tie a carrot at the end of a stick, and they tie it around its neck. And they do this in order to get the donkey moving. And the donkey, it doesn't realize that when it takes one step forward, the carrot also takes one step forward. So in this way, they trick the donkey into doing hard labor, loads of heavy laundry on its back just to get a little carrot. And so the people in Kali Yuga are very lazy when it comes to advancing in spiritual life. They are captivated by the promises of flickering sense gratification, working hard day and night for a paycheck, and on the weekends they spend it. Srila Prabhupada says, you cannot have perfect knowledge by the experimental method. We get knowledge from the Shastra. In the Vedanta Sutra, it is said, Shastra Chakshur Yat Shat. One should see everything through the Shastra. We may be imperfect, but we get knowledge from the perfect source. And Srila Prabhupada uses this example. The child may be imperfect, but because he receives the knowledge from the authority, the father, his knowledge is perfect. A child may ask his father, astonished by the sound. The sound is very loud, so the child may ask, Father, what is this? And the father will reply, my dear son, this is a microphone. When you speak into this machine, your sound becomes loud. So the child takes the knowledge from the father, and if he repeats and understands, then his knowledge is perfect. A child who wants to know his father, if he goes around asking, are you my father? Are you my father? He will never find out the truth. So then how will he know? He must go directly to the mother. Then the mother will say, such and such is your real father. If he goes on speculating, he will never get the right knowledge. Srila Prabhupada says, the Vedic conclusion is that if you want perfect knowledge, then you must approach a perfect person, guru, who repeats the same message that he received from his spiritual master. This is called Guru Parampara. It is not possible to come to the right knowledge by so-called research because our senses are imperfect. We have 4 defects. Our senses are imperfect and limited. We are prone to be illusioned. We make mistakes, and we have the propensity to cheat. An example is a machine which has a flaw, then whatever it produces will also have a flaw, so it can't be perfect. A mathematician, if he's solving an equation, if that very first step is wrong, no matter how hard he tries to work at it, the conclusion is wrong. Why? Simply by that first step. If a person does not know who he is, the spirit soul, part and parcel of Krishna, then everything he does will end in frustration because it is done in relation to the body. I was distributing books in Balboa Park, and you meet a lot of different people. Atheists, Buddhists, scientists, things like that. And so I met this atheist, and after speaking to him for a few minutes, I convinced him that he's actually agnostic. You know, he was saying there is no God, but so I used this simple logic on him. I told him, if our eyes are imperfect and limited, then whatever we make with our imperfect senses, and whatever an imperfect person makes, will also be imperfect and flawed. This means that the microscopes, the telescopes that we manufacture cannot be perfect. So their foundation or basis is incorrect from the very beginning. So how can they have perfect knowledge? My spiritual master, His Holiness Bhadrinarayan Swami Maharaj, said, seeing may be believing, but is not knowing. There are so many things that the eyes cannot see. We cannot see air, mind, intelligence, ego, so many things. So that does not mean that they do not exist. The eyes cannot even see the eyelids, which is the closest thing to the eyes. So to conclude that something is true, whether we can see it or not, is foolish and is actually childish. And Maharaj, he gave this nice example also. If you're inside a building and you want to know if the wind is blowing, how can you tell? We can't see the wind, but how can you tell? Yeah, exactly. If you look outside the window and you see that the trees and the leaves are moving, then you know that the wind is blowing by the symptoms. So, similarly, we can understand the presence of the soul by its symptoms, and those symptoms are life and consciousness. And Srila Prabhupada, he uses this example of Dr. Frog's philosophy. There's a frog in a well, and everything that he knows is strictly based off of the size of the well. And so a friend from the outside tells him and tries to describe to him the vastness of the Atlantic Ocean. So Dr. Frog starts speculating, oh, is it twice the size of my well? And then the other frog says, no, it's much bigger. So then he says, how much bigger? 10 times? And then he says, no, it's much bigger. So the puffed up frog kept increasing the size, but he eventually, it's inconceivable for him. So similarly, there's so many things that we don't know, and we're limited. We, like Maharaj says, we can't see the other side of the wall. So to conclude everything by our machines, and we can't accept that. For us, the ultimate authority is Krishna. In the Bhagavad Gita, 7th chapter, text 26, Lord Krishna says, O Arjuna, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, I know everything that has happened in the past, all that is happening in the present, and all things that are yet to come. I also know all living entities, but me no one knows. Then Krishna describes what is actual knowledge and those who are in knowledge. Krishna says, O conqueror of wealth, Arjuna, there is no truth superior to me. Everything rests upon me as pearls are strung on a thread. After many births and deaths, he who is actually knowledge surrenders unto me, knowing me to be the cause of all causes, and all that is. Such a great soul is very rare. So we should reflect on that. Those that come into Krishna consciousness, what we have is a very rare diamond. Whenever I go out on book distribution, I like to ask questions. Who are you? What is the purpose of life? And what is the difference between the soul and the body? And 95% of the people, they can't answer these questions. So it's very amazing, actually. So it's very important that we distribute Srila Prabhupada's books. I met a doctor in La Jolla Cove, and I asked him, what is the difference between a living body and a dead body? And to my amazement, he couldn't give me an answer, despite being in that field. So I told him the difference is the soul. And so I told him one body is still alive because the soul is still within the body to animate it. And we also call that consciousness. His group of friends became interested and they took a book. In the West, information about matter and spirit is forgotten. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, 5th canto, we're about to read it. It describes Lord Rishabhadev's teachings to his sons. He says, when a person considers sense gratification the aim of life, he certainly becomes mad after materialistic living and engages in all kinds of sinful activity. As long as one does not inquire about the spiritual values of life, one is defeated and subjected to miseries arising from ignorance. Be it sinful or pious, karma has its resultant results. And Srila Prabhupada describes that karma and reincarnation are like fire. Whether an adult touches the flame or an innocent child, the flame will not discriminate. So even if one understands karma or not, it's still going to act. Another book distributing stories. When I present the Bhagavad Gita, I tell them these books teach the art of living as well as the art of dying. And, they like that. So Lord Krishna describes this in the 8th and 15th chapters of Bhagavad Gita. He says, Yam yam vapi smaram bhavam tyajat yanti kalivaram tam tam ivaiti kaunteya sada tad bhava bhavitaha. Whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, O son of Kunti, that state he will attain without fail. And whoever at the end of his life quits his body, remembering me alone, at once attains my nature. Of this there is no doubt. That supreme abode of mine is not illuminated by the sun or moon, nor by fire or electricity. Those who reach it never return to this material world. And this is Krishna's promise. There's a story of a brahmachari. He was a book distributor, and he was asked to see Srila Prabhupada. And Prabhupada wanted to see what he says when he presents his books. So the book distributor says, I tell myths about yoga and meditation. And Srila Prabhupada, he was actually dissatisfied with that answer. So Srila Prabhupada said, you should tell them this. These books will help to solve all the problems of the world. And they will also save you from so much suffering. Only Srila Prabhupada can say that. And so many people are afraid of change, leaving their comfort zone, changing their lifestyle, change of friends, habits, even if it's a dead end. I asked people, hey, these books will change your life. Would you like one? And one man, he said, I like my life. I don't want to change anything. So Maharaj gave a class at the Krishna Lounge, and he spoke on the importance of reading Bhagavad Gita and chanting on beads, and for controlling the mind and senses. And after the lecture, he asked me, how many got books and beads? I told him only a few. Then Maharaj laughed, and he said to me, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. So it's true. So now I want to tell a story about a brave water bug. There was once a pond with a colony of water insects. The water bugs would see a phenomenon. When one of their friends would go up the water, above the water, they would never see them again. They were curious and wanted to find out why. So one day, a brave water bug tells his friends that he will find out what is happening. He tells his friends that once he finds out, he will come back and report it. So it was the day for the water bug to climb up the lily stalk. He had no idea what was going to happen. Once he went above the water, he immediately grew wings. He became a dragonfly. He started soaring through the air and was having a great time. He saw things he had never seen before, and after a while he remembered his friends and the promise he had made to them. At that time, he had 4 realizations. The first realization was that now that you are a dragonfly, why are you trying to go back to being a water bug? The second, you don't want to go back to your past. The second realization is, even if I wanted to go back, I would not be able to go into the water. He had a completely different body and structure. The third realization is, if somehow I was able to go back, his friends and relatives would not be able to recognize him in his new form. Your old world cannot relate to you. If I had, and the last realization he had was, if I had not chosen to give up the comforts of being an insect, I would have never become a dragonfly. This story is important because this represents the many devotees that joined the temple, the ashram. They didn't know what was in store for them. And so it takes courage. There's a nice saying, if nobody in the world believes in you and you believe in yourself, that is enough. But if the whole world believes you and you don't believe in yourself, that is still not enough. So the devotees, they're very brave. They're willing to take risks. And I have a quote by Yamaraj. He's instructing the Yamadutas in the Srimad Bhagavatam 6th canto. He says, my dear servants, please do not approach such devotees, for they have fully surrendered to the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They are equal to everyone, and their narrations are sung by the demigods and the inhabitants of Siddha Loka. Please do not even go near them. They are always protected by the club of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and therefore Lord Brahma and I, and even the time factor, are not competent to chastise them. It's pretty powerful. He also instructs them on who they should bring to his court, the superintendent of death. He says, my dear servants, please bring to me only those sinful persons who do not use their tongues to chant the holy name and qualities of Krishna, whose hearts do not remember the lotus feet of Krishna even once, and whose heads do not bow down even once before Lord Krishna. Send me those who do not perform their duties toward Vishnu, and which are the only duties in human life. Please bring me all such fools and rascals. In the Bhagavad Gita, 10th chapter, 4 and 5th purport, Srila Prabhupada writes, fear is due to worrying about the future. A person in Krishna consciousness has no fear, because by his activities he is sure to go back to the spiritual sky, back home, back to Godhead. Therefore, his future is very bright. We should know what we have and the great mercy that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and our spiritual teachers have given us. Simply by coming to the temple, offering obeisances, following the rules and regulations, and chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. We've been saved by so many bad habits, our karma. Srila Prabhupada also says that Krishna minimizes the results of our sinful activities. Instead of if we get a cut on our finger, Prabhupada would say your hand should have been cut off. So we should remember the mercy that Krishna and our acharyas have given us. Thank you very much for your time. Hare Krishna. Are there any comments, questions, or corrections? I'm sorry if it was a little rushed. Hare Krishna. Yes, Bhakta Tyler Prabhu.
You mentioned the 3 questions that you ask when you're on Sankirtan with people.
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering how you found over time that those were the best 3 questions asked people, and then also if you wanted to share why you enjoy doing Sankirtan so much and why that's a good seva for you.
Okay. One thing I found out was that people are not really self-reflective. They care too much about their family, how the world sees them. So I like to ask questions that make them think a little harder, And after they tell me, oh, I'm so-and-so, I tell me, can you tell me a little bit deeper than that? Not the person that you see in the mirror. And then that usually stops them. And these 3 questions everybody should ask, who am I? What is the purpose of life? What am I doing here? Is there life after death? These are the questions that an intelligent person should ask. It's not where do I find the best burgers? Where do I find the best? We don't ask that. So and I like to ask them with the question that, like what Maharaj says. Someone told him nobody gets out of here alive. So the last impression that you want to leave to people is I want them to think, there's more to life than what we see. And the reason why I like going out on Sankirtan is because I was one of those people walking around looking for fun in all the wrong places. Where's the party, this and that, and eventually a person gets tired of that. Why do I have to spend so much money on this just to feel joy and happiness for temporary, flickering sense gratification? And so, that's one. Thank you, Tyler. Chris?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment that response to that question was such a nice kind of wrap up of the whole talk. I mean, you were kind of building up how degraded this age is, and people struggling to ask those major questions, and then kind of seeing your reflection of taking off and wanting to spread that. I think that's nice. My question that I wanted to ask was, you hit on one point that the devotees are courageous, and I kind of, similar on the same vein of Tyler, what's kind of something that builds you up and gives you that courage as you continue to try to be a devotee and try to walk this path of Krishna consciousness?
So we hear that in order to lose inferior taste, we need to develop a higher taste. And so there's a saying, been there, done that. I've been in the material world. I was working, relationships, this and that. But ultimately it didn't satisfy me. So I started searching for something more worthwhile. And I don't know if you guys know, but I like to rise early, 2:45 in the morning. Why? So I can chant and so I can be in the temple room, be ready to greet the deities, things like that. And even if I were to go to sleep at 11, 12, I would still try to wake up at 2:45. Yeah. But other people that have different reasons why they join the temple, why they're doing this service, that service. But for me, I love the temple life. Yeah. Does that answer the question? Okay, thank you. They don't.
Even 5% is a very big number.
They're 5%. They can answer the question, but it doesn't mean that they were right. You know, like that. Yeah. And when people start using the words "I think," "I believe," "I feel," I tell them I'm sorry. You know, that's called speculation, and it may hurt their feeling, but I tell them there's no weight to that word. You have to quote, law books like that. Yeah. So those 5%, even Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, among many thousands of people, only one will endeavor for perfection, and only one hardly knows main truth. So they may have an answer, but it doesn't mean it's correct. Yeah. And one of the most, we respect a lot of the Christian community, but they're very challenging sometimes. And so I ask them, oh, you speak so much about sin. So I tell them, do you believe killing an animal is a sin? You know, and then they say yes. So I tell them, oh, are you still eating meat? And they say yes, and I tell them, oh, okay. And then, so it gives them time to reflect. You know, I'm contradicting what my beliefs are. So I like to leave them also with something to think about. Yeah, Jai. Yes, Prakash Prabhu.
Thank you for the class, Prabhu. It was nice. So I was wondering, the verse it mentions is the most confidential, the most secret of all secrets. Why does it say so? Like, because it's freely available and anyone can read it. Can you comment on that?
So, like I mentioned, not many people search for truth. I also heard it said, truth is not for all men, but only for those that seek it. So even if it is easily available, like what Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given us, people are still reluctant to take it. And when we're distributing these books, the answers are all right there. And yeah. I asked people, sometimes they would come back to me and say, hey, I got this book. And then I would smile and I would ask them, did you get a chance to read it? And they would say no. So even if it's in their hands, they still won't take it. They won't read it. So I tell them, if you give a very rare diamond to a child, will he know the value of it? You know, so that it gets them to think. You know, what we're distributing is priceless jewels, so like that. So they have it at their disposal, but they may not read it, take to it. Any other questions, comments? Okay, going once, twice. Okay, thank you very much for your attention. I'll go to Srila Prabhupada.